You've come back from the field, you've taken great photographs, but now comes the edit. It is sometimes the toughest part of taking your photographs from great to magic. And today, I want to show you how I take your photographs, edit them in real time, using all the experience I've had from the last 20 years, and taking your image from great to absolute magic. My name is Shem Compion. I'm the Managing Director of C4 Photo Safaris, and for the last 25 years I've been traveling the whole globe with the camera as my passport. Yet, Africa remains my muse, and it's here where I spent the majority of my time photographing, and today I'm going to be sharing those lessons via the editing process with you. So we bring the images back from the field. We've taken images out there and now they're on our laptop. And so often people treat this as a very literal exercise. We are going to edit the photograph to make it look better. And there are very basic elements to do that. You can improve contrast, shadows, highlights. But what I really want is for the image to speak to the viewer. And that's a different level of editing that I want to share with you today. I don't want the image to be very literal. I want the image to be an emotion. And so when we edit, I'm going to dig into what is the core element of the photograph and how do we make that stand out and leap out at the viewer. Because ultimately, we want the images to express their own personality, to create a sentence rather than a word, and all the elements to be balanced in place so that the beautiful parts of the image leap out at you. So when I'm editing literally from a technical point of view, but I'm also bringing a personality to the photograph. And that's what I want to share with you today. Thank you to those who shared their photographs and kindly allowed me to edit their photographs today. That's, I think, a great benefit because I'm going into these images cold. I'm going to open them up and then look and see exactly how I would approach this photograph. It's a very vulnerable place to be in, but it also allows a great interaction between your photographs and me editing. Thank you for that.
This is an amazing photograph from Jeannie Mackinder, which, as we can see, shows quite a number of elements. Firstly, the subject is exactly what we think it is. It's two jackals fighting, and they are absolutely pin sharp. We've also got some added elements. We've got these vultures watching close by, so that adds quite a lot of drama to the actual scene and makes it more compelling. But I like the last one, which is the perspective. This is from a low angle hide, so you're at a eye level perspective here, and that has really made the subject leap out from the background. Look at the horizon line, dead flat, and then the background is in the distance over there. So that's a really, really strong part of the photograph, and what makes it so strong is that the low level has made the subject leap out. These vultures on the right hand side, they're not adding anything to the photograph, so we're going to crop them out. My first attempt is to say, do the vultures on the left hand side add anything to this image? And my answer very quickly is no, even though we like to have animals looking in and seeing as being part of the action in a photograph. I think this image is 100% all about these jackals and the jackals fighting. So we're going to come in a little bit more. And again, I'm going to keep this one relatively center, but not dead center. I like the curve of this guy here, leading into there. And now we notice that that element there is also quite distracting. So I'm going to push my crop up a little bit. There we go. Our horizon is dead flat. The real beauty is that the background is completely blown and we have a lovely bokeh. And that makes the subject leap out considerably into the frame. There is now quite a lot of space here above compared to below. So I'm going to pull this down even more so. We are starting to get into the position of where we've cropped in quite a bit into the frame photograph where we might lose some detail. For the purposes of this, I want to speak to what makes the image so strong. I think these legs here are really strong with this diagonal, and then the curve over here makes this a really, really powerful and compelling action photograph. It's a high action. And think when it's a photograph like this, I think of sports photographs where you want high intensity, you want to fill the frame, and you want the action to be in your face. And that's what this image is all about. It's overcast conditions, and the light is very, very even, and that's really helped you in this instance here. It's saturated the colors nicely. The eye is completely sharp. It actually looks like there might even be some rain in the photograph itself. It's pin sharp. We look at the settings, 640th of a second. Potentially could have gone a bit faster for a scene like this, but I'm assuming that this also happened very, very quickly. So it was a grab shot for you as the photographer. And then a photograph like this really doesn't need that much more done to it. I want to improve the vibrance or increase the vibrance slightly here. And what I would really like to do is also look at the texture of these jackals. So I'm going to increase the texture here. Now, I could increase it globally. That would increase it right across the whole image. It would mean I'm also increasing texture across the background. And you can notice quite clearly that as I increase texture, it increases it on the actual background too, which I don't want. As you can see, it degrades the quality of the background here. So I'm going to go to my mask tool, hit my subject, should find the subject relatively easy. I can go in and brush out these areas I do not want it to affect because it's made an error in selection. But for the purposes of expediency, I'm not going to do that here, but now I'm going to add the texture to just the jackals over here. And the reason for doing this is to bring out the detail in the fur over there. So that's the end result of that. I'm going to punch the blacks out because look at the black on their fur. And the more I look at this photograph, the more I realize that it has been raining. So I'm going to pull the blacks down here. I want the blacks to all jump out in the image. And then I'm going to do some sharpening on this photograph. So I'm going to go down to the detail tab over here. And first things I'm going to do is hit the mask tool. So I hit the option key on the Mac or an Alt on a PC. I click on the mask and I then start dragging this on the right hand side here. And you'll see as I drag it, we use the phrase white reveals and black conceals. So what is in white is what's going to be sharpened, and what is in black is not going to be sharpened. So I want only the jackals to be sharpened. I do not want the background, that area there. I want that to remain nice and smooth. I want my jackals here to be sharpened. Now I'm going to go to the eye of my jackal here, and I'm going to go up. I like to go into the 80s and 90s for very sharp portrait shots like this. Radius is on 1, and I think that's perfect now. 1 being the actual pixel radius. So we're sharpening at a 1 pixel right now. And so that's going to be my sharpening for this photograph. And so here's our end result over here. I noticed that there is some what we would call noise out in the background here in this image. So we can go do noise reduction further down here. And now you can also do AI noise reduction. For the purpose of this, I'm not going to do it. It takes a little bit longer. But let's focus on what this image is really about. Is this very strong, very, very high impact action photograph. Fantastic, and thank you so much for sending it through. This is a photograph submitted by Lynn Cobrin Garrett here in South Africa. As you can see, it's a photograph of high action, high intensity. It's a lioness running through the Okavango Delta waters in Botswana. So that really is very impressive. We've got high action. The sharpness is incredible. As we can see there, we go straight for the eye. And we've got this beautiful water droplets here. We have a small problem in that the crop is very, very tight. Just managed to get the tail in, but we haven't got that much space for the lioness to run into on the right-hand side. So we really are constrained in that regard over there. However, the action is very compelling. So it's very much worth keeping this photograph and seeing what we can get out of it and highlighting those very strong aspects, those elements of this image. As we can see here though, the water is also skew. So I'm going to hit the crop tool and we're going to get this to a straight perspective over there. As soon as we do that, we come to another problem. We've lost the tail of this lioness, and there's no way we're going to get it back unless you're going to go do some serious AI stretching of canvases and creating photographs. We're not going to do that in this instance here. I've cropped this with the constraint being on the original format. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to uncheck that. And I was always taught that there should be no prejudice in your cropping with your photographs. Crop how you feel is going to give the greatest strength to the image itself. And so that's where I'm going to now with my crop tool. And I'm just going to tweak that a little bit more. I want to see the water line. We want to see where the line is in. We want to see where her legs are going. And so that's where we're going to right now. So that is the nature of this image, is that we're going to lose the tail, and I could even come in and do that. But I think actually going back over here sort of just feels letting the tail and some space between the feet disappear into the distance. We can't go any tighter this side. We can have a little bit there. But now let's focus on emphasizing what makes this image so strong. I'm going to push up the whites to brighten it a bit. I'm going to push up some shadows to brighten it, and I'm going to bring the highlights down. I want to reveal all that water. I want to make that water really stand out and contrast against the lioness's skin. Also, we can notice here that this is in diffused light, overcast conditions. So we can push the vibrance up quite a bit. There's no real direct sunlight, and that has really helped in this instance, because if there was direct sunlight, those white water droplets would have really blown out and become unusable from an editing perspective. And so we now have gone from there to here. We want to punch up this photograph. I can even maybe bring up the exposure slightly, a little bit, to even brighten it up some more. And what I'm going to do in this image is now work on the dehaze to really emphasize the contrast between this water in the foreground here and the background over there. And we've gone now from a dull gray image to a bright, vibrant lioness with a lot of power, a lot of energy, incredible action in this image, and the eye is pin sharp. So the eye holds it all together. And the crop has allowed us to focus on making sure that all the attention, all the energy of the image is captured and is in one specific frame. I might now, looking at it again, as I said, always improving the crop later on in the photograph, but there we have lovely detail, exceptionally well captured. And I didn't even look at the technical details, but we notice here 600mm lens, perfect for photographing wildlife with from a distance, but 1,250th of a second. That's what has captured all that incredible detail. Lynn, thank you so much. Wonderful photograph. Another photograph here from Melinda. Thank you so much, Melinda, for this. We have a great subject here. A cheetah with its head up in late afternoon light, and a whole lot of other cheetahs in the background here. So we've got looks like a family of cheetah. The beauty of this is that I've got no sentiment to this photograph. All I'm photographing and all I'm editing is on what I see. And so there's no real sentiment attached to the image. And so I see it might be a family, but if I don't add to the photograph, I'm going to exclude them out of my crop. So I'm going to immediately come in from the right here, because my subject is here, and I want my subject peering into this corner, creating a strong diagonal into my frame. We have another problem with this image, and that is that much of the animal is in shade, but we've got beautiful, beautiful golden light on the actual subject itself. I'm going to correct my crop slightly, give it a little bit more space to breathe, and we might come back at the end again. So we want to minimize the effect of that deep shade, but also keep the golden hue. We don't want to blow out any of this either over here. And we look at the histogram. Most of the image is in the dark, the left-hand side of the frame. And we want to get this data into the center and to the right-hand side without clipping. We don't want to clip the highlights over there. That's the technical version of my discussion. So I'm going to open up the shadows. bring back the highlights. Notice how this has become exceptionally hot. Sorry, I didn't bring up the shadows. Bring up the shadows. Bring the highlights down. And I might even just start pushing the exposure up to bring up and highlight the brightness of the face here. And I'm keeping a very careful eye on this histogram there. I don't want that to clip or touch. It's getting a bit hot there. I'm going to bring the highlights down just to make sure that that stays, or that is not as hot as it should be. But we've got an incredible improvement. We've gone from very dark to quite bright. And I love this foreground here, which is some out of focus leaves that are creating a lovely diffused foreground, essentially a little vignette peering into the actual cheetah in the background there. So I'm going to now keep working on the crop, making sure that we have the cheetah steering off into the corner here, strong diagonal line steering back into the corner. And we want that light over there on his face to really light up. But I do notice that it's looking very hot on the screen, so I'm going to pull this back slightly over there just to make that so we don't have that too hot. Opening up the mask tool, I'm now going to select the background, and that's good enough for what I want to do right now, which is a very subtle darkening of the actual frame itself. So I'm going to just pull that back, and I often just use the highlights or even the shadows tool to pull and darken those up without being too obtuse. Like if I use the blacks tool, as you can see, it goes incredibly strong. But I'm trying to subtly make this cheetah leap out from the background to the viewer. And so I'm going from there, we've now gone to there, and we want to then use another mask, I would say, to create mask here. And here I'm going to brush the cheetah over here. My mask is giving me some trouble. Just the dark areas. And then I'm going to come up here, and again now just push the exposure slightly up and brighten the face of this cheetah. As I mentioned, I like to use shadows and highlights in these instances more than I'd like to use exposure itself. And here I put some blacks just to give some contrast to the actual scene itself. So here we come with almost the final result, because the final part of this image is to work on the eyes. So I'm going to create a new mask, create new brushes, and I'm going to go really small in here. Just click on the eyes themselves there and open them up slightly over here and over there. And so we've gone from a very high contrast, essentially, photograph because of the shadow that the cheetah is sitting in, to opening it up. And if I bring it up here, I would now go back and reduce the eyes subtly. I see that I've made them a bit too strong. And this to me here, now I have to make a decision on a technical level, because here it looks blown out, but if I look at my histogram, it's not blown out. So it's very likely my screen that is causing that issue over there. And if I just need to go back to my mask over here, I can pull that down slightly. We never want to showcase that we've actually been working on the eyes. We just want to let the effect be as natural as possible. But this becomes the end result, and I love the tiny catch light just under the brow of the eye. And that's, I think, what really makes these types of images really stand out, is those little catch lights, those extra elements that add to the photograph. Thank you, Melinda. Lovely result. Monica Henoch has sent through 3 photographs to choose from. And they're 3 very, very different photographs. So I'm going to focus here initially on the selection of the photograph I want to edit. Top left, we've got an incredible subject, and that's the black leopard that's walking around like Hippia. It's a lovely photograph, but I also believe that we've edited quite a lot of wildlife work that is very similar to this one in the preceding videos and edits. This image over here is a lovely detail shot. There's beads, there's hands, and there's feet with a lot of detail, lovely rich light in it. However, the bottom photograph, if you look at all three together, is incredibly strong, because look at the shapes and the energy of those legs. It's very dynamic. We've got lots of triangles there. That is the one I want to edit with right now, because it shows so much energy in a vast landscape. And I just wanted to run through that selection process of why I selected this image from those three there. We can see exactly what our subject is. It's three young children all running in the same direction, legs raised, sand flying. What we do also see is that the foreground, this bottom half of the image, is pretty empty with sand. So it's not contributing to the image. The children and the subject are very central to the photograph right now. So we want to reduce that centrality and improve the composition by coming in from the bottom over here and seeing how we can reposition them in the frame so that it makes a complementary composition within the whole scene. I love the fact that there's this wide open background and scene for these children. They are the subjects, but that is the landscape and the story. And also, this is the landscape they live in. This is their everyday existence. So now it's even stronger within the context. The sand in the foreground is gone. We've got a small amount here at the bottom that's just leading in towards them. Then they become the subject. And if we look at the crop tool, they're on that nice third line over here, the horizontal third. We've got another third line, which is at the top of this very bright piece of land there, and the dark mountains in the top third at the back there. And from here, almost it becomes quite simple, because it's a well-taken photograph. It's well exposed. We look at the histogram on this side over here. We can make some tweaks, and I'm going to make some tweaks, but we know that we've got really strong image with a high integrity of composition and exposure to work with. So I'm going to open up the shadows. I want the subjects just to be lighted up a little bit more. I'm also going to bring the blacks in, and look at the distance in the top here, what happens to the mountains in the distance, because they've really got quite a lot of black in them, richens that up quite substantially. I'm also going to push the whites slightly to the right here, and then I'm going to pull in the dehaze, and the dehaze should work really well in this instance where we've got a lot of depth in the photograph. So all of these are designed to improve and enhance the richness of the landscape. It's great light, there's lovely warm colors and tonality, and so essentially we're improving the fidelity of the photograph on an already strong and dynamic photograph. And we see the original over there is sort of flat and gray, and now we've given it quite a lot of punch. I still think that we can see, or should see, a lot more detail in our subjects here. And I can open up the shadows like this here, because that also gives us a global response. As you can see, if I was sliding along, what it does to the whole image. And I don't necessarily want to do that, so I'm going to leave the shadows there. I'm going to go to the brush tool here, and I'm going to see if Lightroom can identify three different subjects, which it does quite well. And as always, you want to keep these type of changes quite subtle. The viewer that's looking at your photograph shouldn't know that you've worked on your specific subjects. If that stands out to them, or you say you do something like this where you make it very bright, then you've not done your job. You want it to be subliminally unseen. So I'm going to just open them up on them specifically to that amount that you see there right now. Now we're starting to see some definition in the body, some muscle tone, which again draws your eye in. You're seeing much more definition. That means your eyes engaged slightly more. I'm going to adjust the crop on this slightly to see if we can make it a bit more of a balance with the way they're running, and that always takes a couple of tweaks just to work through. So there you have this result of this photograph. However, I also think that they're running in such a large landscape and such a vast landscape that you want to emphasize and showcase that. And so I'm going to uncheck the crop tool there, and I'm going to extend this. We can go into the custom here and go to the 16:9. That's also another way to do it. Very often when you crop a tool, you also come to the conclusion that you are in 16:9. And I'm going to position the composition something like this. And we now, I think, come to a point where we're getting these young boys and girls really in the expanse of the landscape. If I open that up there, we can really see the energy of them, but that added definition and muscle tone really pulls your eye into the photograph here. Now that we've had the chance to see that and look at it, I like to look at it in the large screen. As you know, you notice that this little black piece of sand becomes an issue. So I go to the, I hit the Q as a shortcut, and I go to the clone tool over there. This is the clone tool here. You've got the heal tool there, and then you've got the AI version. We don't need the AI right now. We're just doing a very basic one, and I'm being a bit rough about it. And so we have, as we see there, this one is the stamp, and this is the source where you taking your information from. And as you saw, I moved it around in order to make that a clean element on the sand there. And that, in a very short space of time, is the foundation for this photograph. I've added a little bit of saturation, and now I've added a bit of vibrance as we're talking. It's probably a little bit too high, so I'll pull the oranges back because there's such a lot of orange in this scene over here. But we've gone from a very flat type of image to one where we can see the subject much better. We go back there, see the definition. It accentuates the action. You can see the sand flying, and that is great energy in the image. But then you also have them within this magnificent, harsh, austere environment, which is their home and their landscape that they live in. So there's a lovely context and a lovely narrative to that. Thank you, Monica. Fantastic photograph. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much for joining me through this journey. I hope you've seen the real value of editing somebody else's photographs and bringing the personality of those photographs out. For me, it's a very satisfying process because I get to see images that other people make, and I can really dig into the core elements of those images without any sentiment, without any attachment to those photographs. But being able to do that brings great joy to me because I'm digging in and seeing the personality of the image, which might have been different to that of the original author of the photograph. And there's a strong connection, is if we can make magic, it means the image was a good image in the beginning, and all I'm doing is adding that personality input to it. Thank you for viewing. It's been a great process for me. If you would like this to happen again, please put it in the comments and we can get another round of submissions going to edit your photographs. Thank you and goodbye.